Van declared in the office, pacing back and forth. People don't want to buy walls. They want to buy a movie. Van, please tell me you didn't hire actors, Reba sighed. Not actors. A lifestyle experience. The following Saturday, Reba drove by the house. She stopped the car and rubbed her eyes. There was a professional chef in the kitchen baking real cookies. There was a string quartet in the foyer, and most puzzlingly, there was a golden retriever rented for the day lounging on the front porch with a bandana that matched the shutters. Van, is that a professional dog? That's Cooper, Mrs. H. He's a closing specialist. Van beamed, looking incredibly proud of himself. Look at the buyers' faces. They're not looking at the cracked tile in the bathroom. They're looking at how happy Cooper looks in the sun. Remarkably, the house sold that afternoon, above asking price. I don't know whether to fire you for the insurance liability of the dog or promote you for the commission, Reba told him as they closed the trailer for the day. I'll take the promotion, Van grinned, but Cooper gets a cut in treats. Chapter 23. The Hart household was rarely quiet, but this Sunday was different. It was the first time everyone, including Julian, was gathered for dinner. Reba had spent the afternoon cooking, ignoring Barbara Jean's attempts to Germanize the pot roast. Brock was there, proudly showing off his 1-month sobriety coin from his smoking cessation group. He was eating a steak, as promised, while Barbara Jean watched him like a hawk to ensure he didn't sneak a single puff of the neighbor's grill smoke. Cheyenne and Van were arguing playfully over whose turn it was to change Elizabeth, and Kira was in the corner, recording the whole thing for what she called her sociological study of suburban chaos. Julian sat at the head of the table, looking at the madness with a look of pure contentment. He wasn't the big city developer tonight. He was just a man who had finally found a seat at a table that mattered. A toast, Reba said, standing up. The room went quiet. To the survivors, Reba began, looking at her daughter, who was clear-eyed and strong. To the fighters, she looked at Brock and Vaughn, and to the ones who see the hearth fire, even when it's buried under a mountain of mud. She looked at Julian and smiled, and to the package deal, it might be messy, it might be loud, and we might occasionally take the wrong vitamins, but it's ours. Amen, Barbara Jean shouted, lifting her glass of sparkling cider. And those Germans, they really do know how to make a cake. As the laughter erupted around the table, Reba sat back down. The Houston humidity was still there, pressing against the windows, but inside, the air was warm, the hearts were full, and for the first time in a very long time, the Hart family wasn't just surviving. They were thriving. Chapter 24. The glow from the Sunday dinner had lingered in the air like the scent of Reba's pot roast. Julian had stayed late, helping Reba clear the table long after everyone else had retreated to their respective corners of the house or guest house. You don't have to do that, you know, Reba said, leaning against the counter as Julian rinsed a glass. In the suburbs, we have this high-tech invention called a dishwasher. Julian smiled, but his eyes were serious. I like the quiet. It's a rare thing in this house. He dried his hands and turned to her. Reba, I've been thinking about the Heights project. It's almost finished. We've sold 18 of the 20 units. I know, Reba said, her heart doing a strange little skip. We're a hell of a team. We are, Julian agreed. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. But I don't want to just be a team on paper. I don't want to just be the guy who shows up for Sunday dinner and hopes the dog doesn't eat his shoes. Reba looked at him, her sarcasm momentarily failing her. Julian, I'm not good at the small version of things, Reba. You know that. I go big, or I go home. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. And had been home for a while now. Right here. He opened the box. Inside was a ring that managed to be both modern and timeless, a large, emerald-cut diamond set in platinum. It was elegant, strong, and entirely unexpected. Reba Hart, will you marry me? Will you officially make me part of this beautiful, chaotic, exhausting package deal? Reba stared at the ring. She thought of Brock. She thought of the 20 years she'd spent building a life around someone else's gravity. She thought of the survivor she had become. Julian, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I'm a lot of work. My kids never leave. My ex-husband lives in the guest house. And Barbara Jean. Well, you've met Barbara Jean. I have, Julian said, his voice steady, and I still want to be the one holding the line with you, every single day. Then yes, Reba said, a laugh breaking through her tears. Yes, I will. But if you try to put a golden retriever in our wedding pictures, I'm calling the whole thing off. Julian laughed and pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise kept. Chapter 25. The Barbara Jean Factor. Reba and Julian had agreed to keep the news quiet for at least 24 hours. They wanted to enjoy the secret of quiet. Yes, that changed everything. But they had forgotten about the Barbara Jean factor. Barbara Jean had a sixth sense for major life events, particularly those involving Reba. She claimed it was a bond of sisterhood, though Reba suspected it was more about BJ's habit of borrowing sugar at highly inconvenient times. At 7 a.m. the next morning, Barbara Jean burst into the kitchen. Reba, I had a dream, a vision. There were white doves and a fountain made of fondue. Reba was trying to hide her left hand under her coffee mug. Barbara Jean, it's 7 in the morning. Visions are for people who haven't had enough caffeine. Don't use suburban cynicism me. Reba Hart, Barbara Jean shouted, her eyes darting around the room. She spotted the small velvet box on the corner of the counter, where Julian had accidentally left it. Her scream was high-pitched enough to rattle the windows. Oh my God, it happened. The emerald, it's happening. Barbara Jean, calm down. We haven't even told the kids yet. The kids, Reba. I have a Pinterest board for your wedding that I started when you two first shared a I have themes. I have a German choir that does a beautiful achy-breaky heart and 4-part harmony. BJ, if you tell a soul. But it was too late. Barbara Jean was already on her phone, her thumbs moving at lightning speed. Brock, Van, Cheyenne, emergency family meeting in the living room. Code white. I repeat, code white. Within minutes, the living room was full. Van was in his pajamas, Cheyenne was holding a sleepy Elizabeth, and Brock had arrived from the guest house looking like he'd been through a wind tunnel. What's going on? Is the house on fire? Brock asked, rubbing his eyes. Better. Barbara Jean screamed, grabbing Reba's hand and thrusting it into the air like a prize-winning boxer. The room went silent. Then, total chaos. Mrs. H, you're getting a new teammate, Van shouted, trying to hug Reba and Julian at the same time. Mom, Cheyenne said, her voice soft and full of genuine happiness. You deserve this. Truly. Brock looked at the ring, then at Julianne. For a second, Reba saw a flicker of the old Brock, the one who wanted to be the hero of the story. But then he smiled. A real, bittersweet smile. He's a good man. Red. Better than me at the staying part, I think. He walked over and shook Julian's hand. Welcome to the family. I hope you like carrot juice and drama. We have plenty of both. Chapter 26. Shadows of the Past. The engagement party was a small affair, held at the model unit of the Heights project. It was meant to be a celebration of both the business success and the personal future. Reba was standing on the balcony, looking at the city, when she heard the elevator doors open. She expected to see Van or Barbara Jean with more fondue. Instead, a woman walked out. She was tall, blonde, and dressed in a suit that made Julian's navy-tailored numbers look like off-the-rack bargains. She had a cold, surgical beauty that immediately set Reba's instincts on edge. Julian, the woman said, her voice like ice over velvet. I see you've been busy. Julian froze. He turned, and Reba saw a look on his face she had never seen before. It wasn't fear, it was a deep historical exhaustion. Victoria, Julian said, what are you doing in Houston? I heard you were building something special here, Victoria said, walking into the room and eyeing the blueprints on the wall. The Heights. It has your touch. Bold, expensive, and perhaps a bit legally vulnerable. Reba stepped forward, her survivor mode activating instantly. I'm sorry, who are you? Victoria looked at Reba like she was a stain on the emerald silk dress. I'm Victoria Ashevit, and his ex. Julian walked over to Reba's side, his hand finding the small of her back. Victoria and I ended our partnership 5 years ago, and our marriage 10 years ago. Partnerships are tricky things,